Andy Bierer is Market Group Lead, UK and Nordic countries at Otis. And he recently posted an article on LinkedIn that said 2022 was the end of an era of free money, and with interest rates at 3 to 4% and set to rise further, we can expect to see a rebalancing of investment portfolios. So, Andy, what are your forecasters at Otis saying about the health of the construction industry over the next few years?
Sure. And so I think as we start to look out a couple of years, first kind of keeping our eyes on 2023, and I'm certainly encouraged that there's enough activity and positive inertia to carry at least the first half of 2023. And in fact, we have some projects that we're tracking that really should help us carry the full year, assuming they all materialize. But we will be carefully watching activity in the second half of this year and then going into 2024. And as you mentioned, this is really a direct result of some of the central bank actions that are underway that will have an effect on tightening capital markets, and then ultimately, affecting how many new builds go in. But again, this is on balance with some of the issues that we're also facing in increased inflation. So it's going to be a very interesting year to maneuver all of this from a macroeconomic standpoint once more.
But that being said, there seems to be a little let up in the demand for tall buildings in central London. I mean, in spite of all the warnings about the impact of working from home and the other issues you mentioned, the city cluster keeps growing. I mean, is that your experience? And I guess that's good for business for you too.
Oh, indeed. Yes, it is. And so I would just point to an article that was recently published that had signaled that the announcement of 10 new towers being planned for London, and 2 of which have already been made public, with 55 Bishopsgate and then also 85 Grace Church Street. So for us, and as you may be aware, Otis is kind of one of only a handful of companies that have the engineering, the people, and the technical depth to support these types of projects. So we're well positioned to play in this space and support a 55 Bishopsgate or an 85 Grace Church Street. And then for the others, as they advance from kind of the pre-application planning with the City of London, we'll be ready and certainly, I think, positioned quite well to support those as well.
I remember at the start of COVID, there was lots of conversations about, do we push buttons, and how do we control items we use every day, like lifts? So has COVID had a sort of long-term effect on your design and looking at how we control the sort of systems? And can you give me a bit of a description of what those changes might be?
Sure. It was interesting as I reflect on the time during the pandemic when we needed to be creative and we needed to be so quickly, to especially in our line of business where we're putting lots of people on construction sites, and they certainly a lot of our customers in the service business want to signal a safe return for people back into offices. So we had put together kind of a go no go checklist in construction to get people back to work safely, and then on the service side, we leveraged technologies to make sure that we compartmentalized appropriately. We could account for social distancing. And there's a couple of properties where we have our destination dispatch product, what we call Compass, where we're actually able to adjust the traffic flows within the properties as well, and almost put them on an automatic mode, like a shuttle mode, so people didn't even have to interface with them at all in terms of physical touch, knowing that the next shuttle would be coming quickly to take them to their floor within their property. So we had, I think, experienced quite a bit of kind of creative approaches and repurposing of some of the technologies that we have in our buildings. Now, I'd also point to kind of some of the trends in terms of how people are moving through cities. And I would reference kind of an additional report that was shared, I think it was in The Economist, highlighting that commuters in the UK are falling into a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday pattern for being in the office. And I think they were able to assess that by looking at mobile data. So for us, conventionally, our industry has account managers who would be boots on the ground, knocking on the doors to meet with these people. And some of those folks, they don't all keep the same office hours anymore due to COVID. So how we connect with new and prospective customers is also changing. And I see this is accelerating for us, our digital marketing in our industry, and how architects or building managers interface or are introduced to our products first in a digital space, as that's quickly becoming kind of the first port of call for new business interest. And then I just add on to that, say, secondly, people who own or manage properties They want better insight into their assets, and not only just kind of what's going on in their buildings, but the actual performance day to day, and they want it remotely, whether that's security or HVAC or in our case lifts. And this is where Otis again is a pioneer in remote monitoring and remote intervention technologies for lifts and escalators. And we're building upon our existing digital architecture with enhancements to our Internet of Things offering, and that's what we call Otis One.
So what other technical developments are we likely to see coming onto the market?
You can expect digitalization to continue. I believe COVID has accelerated the need to have more data, more visibility at your fingertips. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. We recently launched a new elevator, which for us we don't do often, and typically I'd say for us we usually take a build to last approach. So we don't launch products very frequently. When we design and launch a new unit, we expect it to be in the market for a long time. So this was a big deal for us. So it's called the Gen 360 platform, and we believe that we've brought something to the market that's a true game changer for vertical mobility, particularly in the area and era of smart cities. So we think the lift of tomorrow will continue to get smarter, and it's going to be fully integrated into the smart building systems. And using the knowledge provided by the unit, we'll be able to bring high precision maintenance and even prognostics to that lift and to the benefits of our customers. Some of the other things that we're seeing is the energy footprint and the impact that the elevator has, or the escalators in the building will continue to also be optimized. And so that's where I think our traffic studies and how we optimize that will be of great benefit. And that's kind of tying back to some of the comments I made before about systems that are already in place. Now, that's just on the new equipment and construction side. Our ambition is to develop really material levels of connectivity across our entire portfolio. So Otis One, the IoT platform that I mentioned before, that is natively integrated into our new Gen 360 product. But Otis One is also available to connect and be retrofitted to other lifts in our portfolio, and that's really irrespective of their vintage. So we're building on existing architecture to fully digitalize our entire portfolio.
So a lot of those things you mentioned are related, I would guess, to being more efficient, reducing the impact CO2 emissions from buildings, which is obviously a key part of design. So the idea of a longer life, it seems it was the first thing you mentioned, whereas maybe a few years ago it might as well, we're going faster. So it has been a shift in attitude to design of the way buildings work that you're involved with that relates to the climate change issue?
I think for Otis, we've always taken the position that whatever we're building, we want it to last the life of the building. And I think what we have seen is that, and that generally depends on the demand placed on the property. Now, we have for a long time in our business been able to modernize existing lifts within properties. So we are able to kind of naturally extend the life to match the life of the building. But yes, I think repurposing, upscaling, and upcycling, all those things, yeah, it's something that we've been doing for quite a while at Otis.
You obviously talk about digitisation and increased efficiency. There's been a lot of talk recently about the impact of AI, that it can write articles. Presumably, AI will be able to do even more things when we get into a lift and can not just wait to get to the top, but maybe there are other things it's going to do for us.
Absolutely. And I think for us, so Otis plays an integral role in the full mobility chain. And so and I'll give you an example. If you work in central London, just imagine your commute. Depending on where you live, maybe the very first mobility asset that you interface with might be the lift to take you to the ground level to either reach your car or the metro. And then from there, when you arrive at your destination, I'd say your journey probably doesn't end there either, but rather will conclude possibly with another ride on a lift to your office floor. So we like to think of the holistic journey and how Otis can contribute to improving that. And we are gleaning new insights from data every day. I think our goal is to maximize ultimately the uptime for all of our lifts in the building, whilst also creating the shortest kind of duration for the passenger from the time they walk in the door to the time that they get to their ultimate destination. But we will, again, this is where our digitalization efforts are really important, pulling off data points to ensure that we continue to improve ultimately the passenger journey.
Good. Well, Andy, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you again for the time and the opportunity to discuss this. Thank you very much.